Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan Kim. Welcome back to ReThink Reviews on the TYT Network, where we're talking about the 1999 film The Iron Giant, one of the best non-Disney animated films of all time, and one that has really, really interesting and powerful messages for kids about morality and also life and death and also war. We have a great guest to talk with us about the movie. His name is Tom Kemper. He's a visiting professor at the USC School of Cinematic Arts. Used to be the film school when people used film, if you still remember that far. And he is currently writing a book about Brad Bird. So, Tom, thank you very much for being here.
It's great to be here.
I had read that when he pitched the movie, he said, I want to explore this question, if a gun had a soul. I'm wondering, what were the challenges that he faced just in the themes of this? I mean, the idea of a children's movie that addresses nuclear war and mortality and like the existence of the soul and what is identity. Like, what did you find about that?
I mean, it's an incredible movie in terms of just how distinct it is in the subject matter. You know, it's a brilliant addition to the kind of material that animated films can cover. Now, Bird could tackle this kind of challenging material and could pitch the film as an anti-gun message, I think largely because Warner Brothers had put all their chips in a movie called The Quest for Camelot. And that was going to be their big animated feature. That was going to be their big debut of their animated feature division. They modeled that film off of Disney in terms of the budget. It had a tremendously high budget. Iron Giant, by contrast, had about half the budget of that. They modeled it on Disney in terms of having musical numbers. And so Bird himself and a lot of the animators that worked on Iron Giant said they felt a degree of freedom. And given also what was the striking decision he made early on, which was that there would be no musical numbers in the film. And he informed the executives of that right away. I mean, they still had to check in with the studio on final drafts of the script and sequencing of the film, but they felt a degree of freedom because of the lower budget and the fact that the studio was concentrating so much of its energy and its staff and administration and management on Quest for Camelot, which ended up flopping.
But I'm curious about like these messages that he has in all three of his movies that I think are so impressive, because in The Incredibles, I feel like the big message is when Dash is talking to his mom in the car and the mom is saying like, you shouldn't use your powers, and he said, well, like, but Dad said we shouldn't be ashamed of our powers, it's what makes us special. And the mom says, well, Dash, everyone's special. And he says, that's like saying nobody is. And like that's such an unusual and powerful message for kids, because with so many movies say, oh, everyone's different, everyone's great, everyone's special. But that one's saying, no, 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 if you're really special, if you're really different, like that's the best thing about you. And then also Ratatouille, I mean, that it's somewhat of a softer message, that idea of like everyone can cook. I was wondering if there's something in Brad Bird's upbringing or experience that really made him gravitate towards these more unique moral lessons for children.
I do think, I mean, first of all, you've hit the nail on the head with Bird, I think, from what I've done in terms of researching his continuity and his strong identity as a director and an artist. And I think it's rare in the world of animation where you have a director emerging with such a strong voice. I mean, Tim Burton would be another example, but in fact he's done probably more, well, he has done more live action features than animation. But it's rare in animation, I think, because studios want to control it so much, on the one hand in terms of marketing and all the ancillary products with toys, and then of course this concern over what children can absorb. But Bird, I think the direction you're taking there is that Bird is a romantic with a capital R, and one of the themes in his films really that binds them is this opposition to conformism and any sort of institution that would hamper someone's individual expression. So it could be individual expression in terms of artistic practice, like the chef, I think, if we could make that analogy. It could be in terms of your expression of your physical powers, as it is in The Incredibles. Or it could be in Iron Giant, that surfaces not so much in the primary story, but in side characters like the beatnik. Dean, who is, you know, anti-conformist. He's the hero of the tale in a lot of ways. I mean, he helps communicate certain messages at the end that without giving away the plot here, I don't want to give away too much, that try to curtail the efforts of the army and these other representatives of authority and conformism. And when you think about the film, there's a motif, a very subtle motif in the film of art and the power of art in terms of individual expression. One of the first things Hogarth does after seeing the giant is doodling in class. He does an artistic rendering, in other words, of the giant. And it's an artistic rendering with that giant's tilted head that suggests he sees some sort of empathy there. The giant, of course, hides out in a place of anti-conformism, Dean's little getaway. And what does Dean do there? He makes art, he makes sculpture. And then the giant starts to take an interest in artistic expression. So it's really a story about the power of human imagination, which I think is a underlying motif in all of Bird's films. And Hogarth really also is the only one who has the imagination not to see the giant as an object of fear, but as a creature, first as his pet, and then gradually, as he matures over the course of the film, as someone who has his own sense of individuality by the end.
Right. I mean, it's interesting because I hadn't thought of that, of looking at Dean as sort of the hero, but he's also the one who introduces the idea of identity. He says you are who you choose to be.
So I think another strong element in Bird's work, and this film is testimony to it, as is The Incredibles, he believes in popular culture as well. Hogarth also watches, what would be considered trashy television or harmful television. He reads comic books, and yet Bird is saying these aren't harmful. They're actually active expressions of the imagination, and in fact, once again, that comes to a kind of culminating moment in the film where the giant learns from popular culture, namely art, the Superman comic book, how to lead a moral life. And his decision at the end is informed by Hogarth. It's informed by, that is, the sense of rightness he's learned from Hogarth about mortality and about his responsibility to society. And also it's an act of rebellion. He is refusing to be what he was designed to be. And so he's learned this very American sense of rebellion from Hogarth, from Dean. Some of the relationships you have of moral instruction and fortitude coming from school and popular culture being something dangerous and threatening to children, as it was seen in the 50s in particular, Bird has really flipped that and shown that no, in fact, popular culture is vital and rich, and you get a great sense of moral instruction from that. And what Hogarth tells the giant about Superman is not that he's powerful, but rather that he was an alien like the giant,
right,
who came to Earth but chose to do good. And that is what Hogarth emphasizes.
Anyway, well, thank you so much for coming in. This is really great to have you here, someone who knows so much about it, and I'd really like to say I appreciate you sharing with the audience.
Well, I love the film, and I encourage people to go see it, so it's been fun talking about it.